Okay, so we'll focus on three things: price controls, meaning price floors and price ceilings, and taxes. So the effects of those government policies on the free market. Okay, so we argued last time that a free market, meaning a market where the government doesn't interfere with the forces of supply and demand, suppliers are allowed to produce what they want and charge what they want, and consumers are allowed to consume what they want and pay what they want, is going to yield, in our theory, an efficient allocation of resources. Okay? Meaning that the producer surplus plus the consumer surplus, or the total surplus, this triangle here, okay, will be maximized. And that output at Q1 occurs at the point where the last unit produced, the marginal cost is equal to the marginal benefit of that last unit of output, and therefore we have an allocatively efficient outcome. Okay? And with government, we're going to find that when the government interferes in a market, that's going to cause some inefficiencies. Okay? It doesn't mean governments shouldn't interfere. It also doesn't mean they should, right? It doesn't mean they shouldn't interfere, because there might be good reasons. I mean, the benefits of government action might outweigh the costs of inefficiency. Okay? But there is going to be some inefficiency, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And that should always be considered when the government makes decisions about interfering in markets. Okay, so here we have a situation where the government isn't interfering, or isn't intervening. Okay, now assume that we're in the market for rice. This is the market I always use, right? Okay, rice farmers lobby the government. They would like to get more for their product than they're currently getting. Okay, the government passes a law which puts a minimum price on rice, meaning you can't legally charge a price below the legal minimum, or what we call the price floor. Now, something that can be kind of confusing is that price floors, if they're going to be binding, meaning if they're going to work, if they're going to actually raise the price of the good as it currently is sold at P1, they have to be above the equilibrium price, which can be confusing for kids sometimes, where the price floor is above equilibrium, and then we'll see that the price ceiling is below equilibrium. Typically, you would think of a ceiling as being on the top and the floor as being on the bottom. So here, okay, it's P sub F, okay. Here we have a price floor. This is a legal government minimum. Okay, now the effect of this is that the quantity supplied will be here, while the quantity demanded is here. So the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded with the price floor, okay? And thus we get a surplus, meaning there's more produced at the higher price than people are willing to consume. So the actual amount that people consume of rice is QD. The rest of the rice sits in storage somewhere. Nobody ever consumes it. Okay? So then, as you would expect here, consumer surplus is going to fall. Consumer surplus had formerly been this triangle here, but at the higher price, consumer surplus is reduced to this smaller triangle. Okay? So as you would expect, a price floor which raises the price of rice hurts consumers. Okay? That should make some intuitive sense to you. Okay. This area here goes to producers as added producer surplus, right? So that increases producer surplus. Okay. Now, producers are going to lose, are going to lose this triangle. Right? This had formerly been a producer surplus, but because this doesn't get sold, right, these units here, between QD and Q1, which had formerly been sold, are no longer sold, and therefore that producer surplus goes away. Consumers never consume this triangle of consumer surplus that they would have consumed in a free market where you produce to Q1, so that's lost to consumers, right? So lost to consumers, lost to producers, okay? And this is the rest of your producer surplus, right? This is still producer surplus. And so here, consumer surplus falls, while producer surplus rises, but it's a zero-sum game here, basically. What consumers lose, producers gain, and so there's no net effect on society, right? Okay? So the effect of the price floor here is that producers gain at the expense of consumers, okay? But there's no, as a result of this, there's no net effect on society. These two triangles here, here and here, are both negative. They both subtract from society's welfare overall. And so therefore, this is the loss to society that results from the price floor, or what we call the dead weight loss. Okay? Any questions? Oh, no. That's your price floor. Now let's go with apartments. Apartments in New York City. Oh, when I ask you on a test to show what a price floor would look like and explain to me why the price floor is inefficient, a lot of times kids want to say, because there's a surplus, and that's not the right answer. Okay? It's true that the surplus isn't something which is good. You have a bunch of goods which are produced which sit not consumed. Nevertheless, that's not the correct reasoning here, or the correct answer to that question in an economics class. The answer is that with a price floor, okay, at the last unit produced here at QS, the marginal cost is greater than the marginal benefit, and therefore you have an overallocation of resources to the production of the good, and total surplus is not maximized as the triangle of dead weight loss is subtracted from the maximum amount of total surplus. Okay, so that would be the correct answer to the correct reasoning. Okay, now let's look at the price floor. So the price floor. Okay, there's your equilibrium without the price floor, price ceiling, I'm sorry. So with a price ceiling, the government is imposing a legal maximum price, right? A legal maximum price. So a price above which the price can't rise, that's the ceiling, right? The ceiling blocks the price from going any higher, okay? And it looks like this on the diagram. Okay, here your quantity supplied will be less than your quantity demanded. Your quantity demanded is greater than your quantity supplied, and therefore you have a shortage equal to QD minus QS. With a surplus, the surplus here in this diagram is equal to QS minus QD. Okay, so the shortage equal to QD minus QS. Okay, the quantity supplied now is QS instead of Q1. Okay, and so this triangle that formerly, when Q1 was produced, and producers got the revenue for that output, the profits for that output, and consumers got the utility for that output, that was consumer surplus and producer surplus. it's now lost to society. It's a dead weight loss. Here the redistribution goes the other way, right? Now the area of producer surplus has shrunk, right, at the expense of consumers who enjoy this area of consumer surplus. But this area, this of course is an increase to consumers, but a reduction for producers, so there's no net change. This area, dead weight loss, is the total welfare loss to society of the price ceiling. Okay, last but not least, taxes. So we'll look at an excise tax here. An excise tax is a tax on the sale of a good or service. And we'll just stick with rice. Okay, so here you have the market for rice with no taxes. When a tax is imposed in this market, essentially what that means is that for every unit of rice sold, the producer is going to have to pay a tax to the government. Let's say it's a $2 tax. Okay? What that means is it essentially drives the cost of producing the good up. It drives business costs up, right? So it's going to reduce or decrease supply. If it's a $2 per unit tax, okay, then the vertical distance between these two will be $2. Okay. So if on every unit the government collects a $2 tax, okay, then this vertical distance between this supply curve and this supply curve will be $2. Why? Because these represent the marginal cost of production. So for every unit of extra output, the government tax is forcing the price to be $2 higher, thus giving us a new supply curve $2 greater than the original supply curve at any given level of output. Okay, so the supply curve shifts in, which gives us a new equilibrium price, causes the price to rise from P1 to P2, and a new equilibrium quantity, causing the quantity to fall from Q1 to Q2. Okay, this would be the optimal level of output, Q1, right, where the marginal cost of production is equal to the marginal benefit of that last unit. Here, the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, and thus we get an underallocation of resources to the production of the good, less produced than would be optimal. Okay, and this area is lost. That's a dead weight loss, as this triangle would be the maximum area of welfare that consumers and producers could accrue in a free market, but it's reduced by this triangle with the tax, and so we call that a dead weight loss. So the dead weight loss represents the inefficiency. Okay, that's it. It's a wrap.